Доброго дня, шановні.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Greetings to those who joined us at UCMC Press Center. And we have the topic about Joint Effort 2020 exercise as a response to Caucasus 2020. I give the floor to Ganna Gabko. We thank Ukraine Crisis Media Center for giving us the opportunity to discuss this issue today and to speak about the strategy, how to counteract aggression, taking into account Caucasus 2020 exercise. The topic of today's briefing is joint effort exercise as a response to Caucasus 2020 exercise, Ukraine in the epicenter of civilizational confrontation. Mikhailo Gonchar, president of Center of Global Studies Strategy 21st Century, one of co-organizers. Andrei Ryzhenko, captain first class, expert on the issues of maritime security. Thank you very much for being with us today. Yuri Kochevenko, director of International Center of Counteraction to Russian Propaganda. Mikhail Samush, Deputy Director of Center of Research Army and Conversion, and Valery Kravchenko, expert of National Institute of Strategic Research. Also, I would like to thank two special speakers who joined us today, the Deputy of the European Parliament, former Defense Minister of Lithuania, and head of NATO Assembly, and it would be really great to start with Rasa Knevich. Rasa.
All the best and best greetings from Kyiv.
So we started our discussion today.
Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes. So Rasa, we will start from you. So
just a moment. I would like to ask to help because I hear translation. I don't know why.
Okay, just a second. Some technical.
Disconnect me from interpretation because I hear Ukrainian language in my.
You hear Ukrainian language when we are talking in English.
Yes, but it's translation. I don't know why.
Окей, so Rasa. Може, я тоді буду говорити українською, ви будете чути англійський переклад.
Okay, so I am ready.
So, Rasa, thank you for joining us today. I already presented our speakers of our very important discussion. So, could you provide us also your view from Brussels, and plus also as a former Minister of Defense of Lithuania and also head of the Parliamentary Assembly of NATO and currently member of European Parliament. Actually, what is the reaction and what the EU could done to counter Russian hybrid warfare? And you know that Russia is conducting a Caucasus 2020 military exercise. Ukraine, with our strategic partners and some countries from NATO alliance, also prepared a response. But still, is it enough, or how should we, Western civilization and Ukraine with our key strategic partners, to develop our strategy, taking into account the current situation in Belarus? And I know that you and Mr. Kubilius and Lithuanians, together with Poland, they are taking more proactive position in response to what's going on in Belarus. So please, the floor is yours. Please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for invitation. Always nice to hear from you, to meet you. Ukraine is not less important for us, despite that Belarus today is on the main headlines and our resolutions. But you know very well that it's very much connected and important issues when we look from European Union side towards Eastern Partnership, Eastern democracy in Eastern countries, Eastern European countries. I will start by saying that, answering your question on hybrid warfare, that recently, next week, we will have first meeting of the special committee on political interference into the political processes in European Union, including information warfare. And I became member of that committee and vice coordinator from EPP. So we will, for 1 year and even more, maybe, we will do our best to try to okay. Because I am, yeah, okay, thank you so much. So that will be interesting job related, of course, with your question, and of course, very much Ukrainian expertise will be very important, because you are some kind of center of hybrid warfare, and you have attacks of hybrid warfare, and you have really very important and good experience. But I will start my intervention, some short statement, saying that the main and a little bit broader, to take a little broader view about everything you will talk, my main message to you today is very clear. Despite aggressiveness, despite Putin's muscle game, Kremlin politics is the politics of losers. Like it happened with the USSR, the same end I see for the Putin's Russia today. Why? I will try to explain shortly. And I will start from the very fresh news from European Parliament today. You know that we had important day, by the way, State of the Union of Ursula von der Leyen, our President of the European Commission. Every year we have such a statement, a State of the Union. And I will quote a little bit. What did she say on Russia and on the countries like us, like you? I will quote, "To those that advocate closer ties with Russia, I say that the poisoning of Alexei Navalny with an advanced chemical agent is not a one-off. We have seen the pattern in Georgia and Ukraine, Syria and Salisbury, and in election meddling around the world. This pattern is not changing. And no pipeline will change that." This is Ursula von der Leyen. Manfred Weber, as well German politician, he is leader of my political group, European People Party political group, the biggest one in European Parliament. He said even more. 30 years ago, people in Budapest, Dresden and Prague went out and fought for democracy and freedom. 12 years ago in Kiev, and now in Minsk, the idea of freedom is going to the east. And nobody can stop it, neither Lukashenko nor Putin. I think these messages are very important, and believe me, they are important because I feel different mood today among members of European Parliament when 5 political groups, and it is more than 80% of members of European Parliament, signed united resolution we will adopt this week on Belarus and Russia. Putin lost friendly Ukrainian nation in 2014. He is losing, I think he will lose support of many Belarus people of Belarus because of support for toxic Lukashenko today. Of course, military is his foundation to keep this kleptocratic and corrupt power regime. We see this next to the borders of my country. Militarizations, they started approximately in 2009, next to the borders of Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, and Poland, is also is the same in case of Ukraine. And military aspect to keep control of territory was the real need for them to attack Ukraine, to annex, occupy Crimea, and to launch war in the eastern part of Ukraine. So Crimea is the best example of that politics. And let's look shortly using imagination of the European map now in front of you, from north to south down to Mediterranean. Kremlin is building fortresses of 21st century, and military experts call them A2AD. Everything in one composition: air, space, even marine, sea and land forces together to build such kind of fortresses. Kola Peninsula, Kaliningrad, Crimea, and Syria are the most important on the line. And I think Russian activities in Libya today are of the same issue, to surround European Union from the south. The costs of such politics are huge. Russia has big troubles in economy. We in European Parliament will adopt resolution, as I already mentioned, on situation in Russia and poisoning of Alexei Navalny, where is very important message. I will give you a quote. In the light of the Navalny case, European Parliament reiterates its previous position that to halt the Nord Stream 2 project. And I see today among members of parliament from different political groups the same support, and this would be very important to do so if it will happen. So why is it important? Because with the money for gas, Kremlin regime is able to develop such chemical weapons as Novichok, to finance such operations as the poisoning of Alexei Navalny is costly. They use European money for the war against Ukraine, for the military exercises we speak, and you will speak later here now. And the EU countries cannot be complicit. Yes, today Russia is able to launch the war against Georgia, Ukraine. The interest to restore empire on the basis of Slavic countries or even more still is priority for Kremlin. But it is very short-sighted politics. It goes with the losses of the lives of the people, but it is politics of losers. The people of Belarus is example for Russia today. I am sure for that. More than 70% of people in Russia, they are following what's going on in Belarus. And this is what Putin is mostly afraid. Ukrainians, Belarusians, and other nations in the Eastern European region can change the European continent. European continent as a whole, not only European Union is Europe, it's much larger understanding of values and everything. Yesterday on parliamentary debates, I called on the EU member states to fundamentally change their policy from Russia first to Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, Belarus first. This is the only way to help Russia change and to stop this militarization of the region. So, живе Belarus, слава Україні!
Героям слава, живе Білорусь, і слава Lithuanians. Дуже дякуємо за ваш виступ. В колег є запитання до Раси. Пане Михайло.
Thank you very much for your intervention, and I encourage any question.
Thank you for your efforts and all preparation of new resolutions. And I think it's really important that finally we will see that Nord Stream 2 will be stopped. and we will stop Novichok stream, because we understand that money from energy, from oil, from Russia, and also Nord Stream 2 should be considered as an export of corruption. So this is why it's really important to limit of Putin's opportunities to extend his power and his reventionism politics. So having such good and strong allies like Lithuanians are in the European Parliament, I think we still have to think how to extend the number of Ukraine's friends within the European Parliament and its institutions. It's crucially important when Ukrainian Parliament sometimes adopting some resolutions very late. But it's really important that just September 14, Ukrainian president signed a decree and Ukrainian strategy of national security of Ukraine was signed by president, where we see that strategic goal of Ukraine to move towards NATO and EU full-fledged membership perspective is fixed, and also cooperation with NATO and others. But we hope that it will not be just declarations or decorations, but we do believe that we will see a new military exercises, and also we mentioned that next year Russia is preparing West 2021, Запад 2021 military exercise, joint military exercise. So we hope that the European Union and Ukraine and NATO will work together to prepare a response and finally to develop a strong strategy how to prevent new conflicts, but not how to react. So now, one question. Yes, please.
It's not a question. It's not even a question, but
Я не запитання, я хочу ремарку. It's
what was very obvious and organic for many years was pointed very clearly in the strategy that Lithuania is a strategic partner of Ukraine. I would to underline this point and to recall our Lithuanian partners. We already have a very, let's say, fruitful partnership with different think tanks, with different think tanks in Lithuania about the hybrid warfare, about the prevention of hybrid warfare. So I guess that what we finally did officially appointed this strategy partnership officially with Lithuania. It's our chance even to be stronger together and to promote these future projects preventing the aggression of Russian Federation in our region and making our efforts very fruitful. Thank you.
Thank you, Valery. So now I would like to give a floor to Mikhailo Gonchar, who is the president of think tank Center of Global Strategies Century 21. And his center has published a lot of analytical papers on Russian hybrid warfare. They even invented hybration word. And Mikhailo also is specializing on energy security as a part of national security. So, Mikhailo, please.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you, Rasa, for your impressionable contribution to our discussion. І далі я буду вже українською мовою.
And I will continue in Ukrainian. I would like to make a short review, a short description of the of today's situation, where we are now, and why our collective effort is a right thing, which is to be done at right time and in right place. Let us look at the end of previous year, the biggest aim of Kremlin at that time was to reload the Kremlin regime, to start the Putin's terms in presidency from zero, and thus to open the future for this regime. Then finalize the Nord Stream 2 construction. According to the schedule, it had to be finished by spring this year. But by February 2020, by the moment when Surkov wrote that only the force brotherhood imposed upon Ukrainians is the only one historically grounded way to act with the Ukrainians. Even by that time, Russian politicians were ready to do that, to follow that path, that is, to employ force upon Ukraine. But by the mid-2020, the situation had changed radically. The black swans appeared on the horizon. In late December 2019, the United States had introduced sanctions against the companies which participated in the Nord Stream 2 construction, which hampered its construction. Then the pandemic had outbreak, and although Russia tried to play with the humanitarian support when they sent their humanitarian parcels and cargoes to Italy, etc., and also announced about humanitarian support to so-called southern Ukraine, in case Ukrainian government proves unable to cope with the pandemic. That statements were made and done with only one purpose: to resolve the real humanitarian problem in Crimea, where they have a huge problem with potable water. And at that moment, again, the black swans appeared on the horizon. The wave of rallies and protests raised in Russia, beginning with Khabarovsk, then the problems with Lukashenko. Putin's plans were related to the Belarusian candidate imposed by Russia, but unfortunately that scenario failed in Belarus. And one more incident happened, the accident with Mr. Navalny's poisoning. And this was against the background when in southern Russia, in Krasnodar, in Rostov region, and in Crimea, several military exercises were held in early 2020, and those military exercises were aimed at a large-scale military operations, and this time we expect to see one more military exercise next year Russian exercise. But unlike that military exercise which we witnessed in spring, this new military exercise scheduled for the next year could hardly be developed into the massive offensive against Ukraine. I believe that they should serve the old purpose to destabilize situation in Ukraine, first to integrate some spies or subversive agents here in the eastern Ukraine, and due to that destabilization in Ukraine, to force Ukrainian authorities to forceful peace negotiations later next year. Again, you might recollect that on May 29th, the heavy military airplanes, bombers of the United States flied in the sky of Poland, Ukraine, etc., just to demonstrate that they are here. And during the last 2 weeks, B-52 Star Fortress, the reconnaissance airplanes made flights from the British airbase. And after all those events, it won't be so easy for Russia to do some radical steps during military exercise in Caucasus in southern Russia. This will make impossible application of the old scenario from 2014, when, against the background of the Olympic Games, Winter Olympic Games, Russia showed military exercise and then interfered into Ukrainian affairs. That is, today we observed preemptive actions, although those steps were made as a reaction on Russia's demonstration of force in the Black Sea and at the eastern borders of Ukraine. Nevertheless, all that demonstrations made by NATO allies, they deterred Russia, so to say. And I fully agree with Rasa that additional sanctions against Russia should aim not just a suspension, but the full stop of the Nord Stream 2. And we expect that Russian attempts to remove sanctions, to stop them, is closely interrelated with the successful implementation of the Nord Stream 2 project. At the same time, we observe that it always has a positive impact when our Western allies start to act proactively. Thank you, Mikhail. I fully agree with you that Of course, we can participate in joint military exercise with our Western friends and allies. On the other hand, we should prevent any subversive actions of our opponents, both in Ukrainian territory and around. I might remind you about the Wagner's case, etc. And we observe how the Russian Federation tries to destabilize situation in Ukraine with the involvement of the fifth column, so to say. With this, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Andrei Ryzhenko, who is an expert on the maritime security. He also worked much with the United States and with the European Union, and we understand how much effort you devoted to the security and defense on our marine borders. So today, analyzing Ukraine's response to the Caucasus 2020 military exercise, and keeping in mind the official news from the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, what would you comment about possible top priorities? Whether the Kremlin's strategic goal to use both Azov Sea and the Black Sea against Ukraine and its attempts to turn the Black Sea into the Russian marshes, whether our national defense strategy is sufficient or not. I have retired from the military forces a month ago, and nevertheless I continue to deal with all those issues. The military exercise Caucasus 2020 is peculiar with its marine component. Unlike in previous military exercise, in this very case, we have strong marine program, so to say, both in the Black and in the Caspian Seas. We can observe a strong link between the Caspian Sea, the Azov Sea, and the Black Sea. They're used as places where Russian military marine forces are accumulated, and not only marine forces, and then from those groups, military groups which are deployed there, Russia can easily supply military forces to Syria, to Northern Africa, to the south of Europe, etc. Of course, it's not easy to understand and to imagine that the Black Sea could be used as a military platform for a lap and military attack on the Mediterranean Sea. Russia tries to apply its hybrid impact on the countries around the Baltic Sea too, but it is not that successful as it is in the Azov and Black Sea. The Caucasus 2020 will last till September 20 this year. They will use the military fields and they will be, by the way, bring ships from the Caspian Sea via Volga and Don Canal to the Azov Sea and then to the Black Sea. And the military forces will be trained for further action with the participation of Belarusian and Armenian troops. And in Caspian Sea, Russia plans to involve the Azerbaijani and Durrani forces. Thus, Russia strives to establish its dominion on the Caspian Sea and further use it as a military ground for its missiles, which might target Syrian territory, because it's very convenient to deploy missiles there near Caspian Sea and then direct them on Syrian territory, which could not be done from the Black Sea territory. What can Ukrainian military, what can Ukrainian marine military forces do? We have to defend our ports and our critical marine infrastructure. We should keep our ships, our military ships in the critical points, keep observation and patrolling, and ensure safety and security of navigation, Ukrainian navigation. This could be done by the island series ships. Last year, the United States supplied first two island series ships to Ukraine, and next year we will have further ships. The second objective is to respond to possible reconnaissance groups and paratroopers which could be deployed urgently to Ukrainian territory. Mark 6 ships, Mark 6 type ships could be used for this purpose, which should patrol the coastline. And the third objective is to be prepared on the physical repelling of the enemy's possible enemy's offensive. This could be done, but by our ships equipped with small missiles. And when we look on the Caucasus 2016 military exercises, which were held in the region of Crimea, at that time the landing of the marine paratroopers was rehearsed, so to say, during that exercise. And having analyzed that exercise, we have to recognize that such a thing could become rather successful despite its similarity to the old-fashioned Soviet-style military operations of marine paratroopers. And we expect that Russia will continuously improve its use of marine paratroopers in the Black Sea, in Crimea. We expect that big warship Moskva will participate in the nearest exercise. Also, the goal finding system will be tested. First, it was tested this winter when Marshal Ustinov big warship attended Crimea this winter. So this all points out to a tendency. They try to cover the gap which exists in the goal finding area in the marine, military marine sector, which is the difference between the Russian troops and the NATO forces. Currently, Russia is mobilizing its forces and mobilizing even its reserve staff to participation in that military exercise. Last time, even 80 Il-86 planes supplied paratroopers to the place of military, to the location of military exercise. I am very happy that our joint military exercise, which will start soon, was synchronized with the Russian military exercise to demonstrate that we keep in alert. And I would like to remind you that today we definitely observe that although there are not so many ships used, but the planes are very proactively used in the Black Sea, and now we observe how one French big military ship and one British military ship entered the Black Sea. And it will be very interesting to observe the response. I would like to mention one more general trend in the situation. Both in the Black Sea and in the Baltic Sea, Russia tries to interpret its exclusive maritime zone as a zone as a non excessive zone. That is zone which is not allowed to the neighbors. That is, they try to push out all the countries from their exclusive maritime area. But this conflicts with the main provision of the international marine law. Territorial waters are open for navigation of foreign ships and after my 35 years in military service, I now I will be observing the situation for the first time as a civilian person. Thank you, Andrei. I hope that experts like you are very much demanded in the military forces, and I hope that you will nevertheless come back as an expert. Today, we are again at the beginning of revival of our military marine forces, and I hope that Navy forces, and I hope that eventually we will succeed. Those military ships which you mentioned entering the Black Sea and all our work tend to convince us.
Але я думаю, те, що згадав пан Михайло,
It seems to me that that strategic flight of the U.S. bombers over some European countries had demonstrated to Russia that Ukraine is not a lone country, is Europe, which is not happy with the Russian military efforts. In May 2020, we expected to have to host the Parliamentary Assembly of NATO in Kiev, which was cancelled because of the pandemic. But Ukraine had received the status of the special partner of the of NATO. And after the Macedonia had become, after Macedonia, Northern Macedonia had become the 30th member of the alliance, Ukraine also is looking at this, its special status as a hope to become the NATO member one day in future. How do you think? What can we do?
Thank you, and I believe something should happen with Russia for this, in order that the situation become more calm. But we should be realistic. So this is the year of black swans. For someone, this is inspiration. For someone, it is the reason to become cautious, and this year will end soon, actually. First, I would like to speak about the strategy. I had the honor to participate in the development of the strategy. We have been waiting for a long time for the strategy. So there were objective reasons for this, including COVID. What we have, I hope, is satisfying. We speak about our aspirations to become NATO members, and one of the key pillars, of our new strategy, this will be a cornerstone for other strategies. I hope they will appear soon, and then we will have budgets for their implementation. Unfortunately, we have problems with this. One of the pillars is resilience. And there should be social and critical infrastructure resilience. This is really an important task. And also we have an ambition to become a center to counteract hybrid aggression. And we have a lot of experience in this matter. And we may teach NATO nations about this, about opportunities. Solidarity of the alliance that is demonstrated by its individual members in the course of the training. We value this greatly. Ukraine will join to NATO reflection process. This is the development of strategical concept till 2030. Together with Georgia, we will do this. And our involvement should be active. The Black Sea security, the strengthening of the eastern flank of the alliance. Here we should actively cooperate with those who are interested in such initiatives. This is Georgia, if you are speaking about partner countries. I'm sure also that Azerbaijan is our strategic partner and we hope, will join. I hope that two officers that will monitor Caucasus 2020 from Azerbaijan, they will be of use, their observations will be of use, and Azerbaijan rejected participation as a partner country of shows, and like India, they rejected participation, and this says a lot about it. When I'm speaking about this is about Bucharest 9 and also Lublin Triangle cooperation, Baltic and Black Sea regions. It was called Baltic and Caspian region, and Black Sea was one of the elements. This region was broader. There was connection. There is a theory of chaos and theory of triangles. So Russia draws these triangles of instability and creates instability everywhere and is trying to use this instability. They have been doing it for a very long time, starting with the times of the Soviet Union. We should be proactive here in our policy. I have said about Caucasus 2020, and they want to promote their interests there, and Russian leadership is trying to rebuild the Soviet Union 2.0 and to have the sphere of influence where they can do this. Also, participation of China in these exercises. If we are speaking about solidarity from our side, we see destroyers, reconnaissance planes of US and Great Britain, France ships, and they demonstrate solidarity with us, and China demonstrates solidarity with Russia, and Russia wants to demonstrate that China is involved with them, and China, of course, they have their own interests in the region. Practically, if we are speaking about all these exercises and our response to these exercises, I'm really glad that Ukraine does not violate any international obligations. And we declared 12,000 for this training, and also Rapid Trident will be nearly parallel with the Caucasus 2020. There is a Vienna document of 2011, the document of OSCE, and Russia violates this document, especially concerning military training. They have bigger number of troops than it is allowed, and there was training 2019, West 2019, and all the exercises violates the numbers. So they use 80,000, but they may use only 12,000. So they divide the exercises into many small exercises, and in this way they avoid formal violation. Russia produces military incidents, and they have been doing it during Sea Breeze exercise in the Black Sea in 2020, NATO exercise, and they do it efficiently, directly in Baltic and Black Sea region during the last 4 or 5 years. And here we need our initiative, and NATO should build its strategy in the area, and OSCE, they have Baltic group of OSCE to prevent these military incidents. And I believe that the time has come that we should create a Black Sea group of OSCE, and we should promote this initiative together with Bulgaria and Romania. They are our partners in this, and I would like to say that there is a context of necessity to introduce specialized maritime forum concerning security in the Black and Azov Seas. And we understand that de facto the Black Sea is annexed. Unfortunately, we do not speak about this often. We should draw more attention to the issues of Azov Sea and Kerch Strait and ship transportation there. So about projection of defense and force, we should repel the force. We should promote our interest in different organizations, and this is our chance for defense. Caucasus 2020 has several components, not only maritime, but also land component. And we remember the end of Caucasus 2008 exercise. So there is a real threat of mobilization of southern military district of the Russian Federation. We understand this big presence, this big attention of the international community towards this problem, despite the fact that Russia was trying to spoil this problem with other events. So Belarus is drawing a lot of attention now, and everyone is waiting for presidential elections in US, and there is a window of opportunities. This is not only about local elections here. There may be destabilization that can be used. Parliamentary elections in Georgia end of October, and presidential elections in Moldova on the 1st of November. So this is a complex that Russia may exercise, and maybe they will have more cautious strategy. So Kozak, instead of Surkov, is dealing with these issues now, and the enemy is not less dangerous than before. They have the same intent. They want to ruin independent Ukraine. They want to have big influence there. They want to stop our independence. We should take these goals of our enemy into account, and we should counteract. We should reinforce our security and our military capability. Also, maybe we should speak about leadership of Great Britain in the G7, and we see that they help to reinforce our forces in the Black Sea, and we invited parliamentarians from the Committee of Foreign Affairs, from Security Committee, in order that but they had some other meetings, and I believe that parliamentarians and their assistants will help us to work through OSCE. He doesn't pick to the mic. So we now give the floor to Yuri Kochevenko, Director of the International Center for Counteraction to Russian Propaganda. Because we understand that there are not only military exercises and real actions, not only tanks in the occupied territory. Russia also works a lot through its TV channels, Sputnik, Russia 24 channel. Macron first rejected them, but then these channels continue their activity. They continue Kremlin's policy. Yuri, are you with us? Thank you very much, dear colleagues, for giving me the floor. So there are some exercises, but military exercises are temporary, but propaganda is continuous. It is delivered permanently. My colleagues mentioned Caucus 2008, 2020 military exercises, but also there were military exercises West 2017, and General Staff then considered such an opportunity that there will be intervention, and they worked on scenarios, and I participated in this as an officer of the staff. Then and now, there was a bright face of disinformation about what is going on, to threaten, to confuse, and to constantly create tension. Then they said about 5,000 railway cars to bring forces to Belarus. Others, there were other factors, and now we have the same situation. And Anna said about Sputnik and Russia today, and this is correct, but the network of influence is broader. Sputnik and Russia today, this is what we see in reality throughout the world, throughout Europe. They created centers of influence that are masked as local groups, journalists, TV channel, NGOs. Allegedly, they do not have direct contacts with Moscow, but in fact, they are a network of influence, and they go deeper than we may imagine. And when, on order of Moscow, from one center, they start to broadcast necessary narrative. One of the key narratives that Russia is trying to promote in the world media sphere is invincibility of Russian army. This is done in order to threaten us. It is really important that, despite the fact that we understand this threat, we should not believe in this. This information about concentration of forces near the border, concentration of forces in Crimea, it can be real, but it can be provided special. This can be just disinformation in order to get a response from us, in order to have tension in society, in order to have tension and readiness of our forces. Then, when this threat is revealed as fake in society, there is a drawback, and people say, oh, there was no threat, they just threatened us by this information in vain. But there should be proper response, efficient response. Unfortunately, because of pandemic of coronavirus, we didn't have our exercises for reservists, and Russia does this. And in the case of a real threat, our bodies and key units, they will be in heightened readiness. But at that, we do not announce comprehensive mobilization. We should not be afraid. We should not demonstrate that we are afraid. We are capable to protect our country, to defend it. And the leadership of Ukraine, we should not allowed to speak with us with the use of this force with the use of the threat of force. We should provide proper military and
В нас є перше запитання
other type of
як
response to this.
стратегії національної
And
безпеки
about the strategy
серед стратегічних
of
партнерів
why Romania is not among the partners there. Why do we ignore such important elements, such important country?
готував пан Валерій Кравченко.
Maybe Valery Kravchenko will tell us about it because they participated in the elaboration of the strategy. Now, I give the floor to Mikhail Samusi, Deputy Director of the Center of Research of Army and Conversion. Mikhailo, you heard the opinion of our speakers and the position of the Deputy of the European Parliament, friend of Ukraine, that after Navalny poisoning and events in Belarus,
Скажімо, Захід не просто на рівні
the West
стурбованості заяв, але думає,
is not only concerned but also searches for leverage how to influence Russian Federation, and we want to have embargo on energy supplies, not only stop to Nord Stream 2, but also readiness of Ukrainian state to efficiently protect, defend itself, to repel the enemy. And we should be proactive because we understand that there are many threats and challenges. And one of the negative scenarios, like in Belarus, this may create additional threats to Ukrainian security. Thank you very much for this invitation. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I would like to express some healthy pessimism concerning readiness of our allies to active actions. Because flights of B-52, this is good, but if we look from the military perspective, the correlation of forces, the balance of forces is for the benefit of Russian Federation. Several figures. For example, they have 200 missiles to launch at one time. And I believe that Romania should be our closest ally, but they have 0 missiles. A correlation of the Black Sea Fleet and the Ukrainian fleet, 1 to 15, approximately. We may speak a lot about solidarity and readiness of NATO to support us, but I believe that until NATO expresses political readiness to participate, not only in trainings, but also in repel of the aggression. What is political readiness? This is about Article 5, I believe. I do not know whether this is pessimism or mistrust, but I believe that if now, during Caucasus 2020 training, there will be operation near Zmyiny Island, and some aggression will be made against Ukraine, I doubt that NATO countries would directly participate in military conflict with Russian Federation, as it happened in 2018 in the Kerch Strait. No one demonstrated force against Russians, and the Russians understood this as a permit to act. Not only during this training, Russia will test the readiness of NATO to take responsibility. Not only demonstrate readiness to protect NATO countries and the interests of the NATO countries, because I'm sure if there will be action against Romania, they will do some actions. But I do not know about the intensity, but I believe that Russians won't do this. But if this happens near Mini Island, and there will be violations of international law, I don't believe that NATO nations will provide, maybe they will provide some concerns, but I don't believe that they will send their ships there. Montreal Convention, even 3 American destroyers cannot enter the Black Sea because there is a limitation on their tonnage. So maybe NATO should help us build our maritime capabilities. Maybe there should be NATO fund that would financially provide for procurement, maybe joint procurement of ships and navigation equipment. And first class captain said that we do not have such systems, but in Russia we do not have such system in order to use, for example, missiles such as Neptune and drones. And these systems will be used during joint effort training. This is good. So this is pessimism. About optimism, the difference of joint effort 2020. For the first time in the history of Ukraine, this is strategic staff training. The main is not that what will be done in polygons. This is the strategic systems management, how the military are managed, and they will use NATO standards, and our partners, US, first of all, and Great Britain will participate in this training. They will help Ukrainian commanders and staffs to work for the first time in history, not in accordance with the Soviet or post-Soviet methodology, but according with the standards of NATO, using J structure. And I believe that this is a big step ahead because really we may speak a lot about decorations, imitation, to going to NATO standards, but this strategic management issue is really important thing. You cannot pass it. This is one of the first steps to declare that Ukraine is ready to be NATO member and ready to joint actions, to any joint actions, I stress, not only to exercises, but also to military actions in the Black Sea or in other military sites with our partners, and during the series of training exercises. There should be test of readiness to real actions. And this will be agenda for the next year. If Russia sees that Ukraine is with NATO and they are moving forward together, that we raise our ability to joint actions, and Russia will think twice whether they will carry out some operations to create a corridor to Crimea, whether they will send paratroopers. Maybe this exercise will show to Ukraine and to NATO that Ukraine should quickly build its fleet. We need to create these maritime forces. We need missile ships, patrol ships, and they have 6 submarines in Russian fleet, and we have 0. So Russia fully controls this subwater. No ship that goes to the Black Sea, it cannot become when it carries out any tasks. So joint effort is a symmetric approach. There are drones, subwater drones, above water drones. We should use these systems, not only in Ukraine. We should work jointly with Romania, Bulgaria, and Georgia and other nations. And otherwise, they will create a Russian lake there instead of the sea. I have some pessimistic attitude, but also we have some positive trends, of course. Thank you very much for this sober approach. If we are speaking about the forces, we are lagging behind. We should build our fleet. We should think how to do this, taking into account limited resources we have. This is evidently so. And in July, Putin attended the shipbuilding plant in Crimea, and they think how to build military ships there. They put in resources. They do not imitate, they really do this. And I agree about sub-water area. There are submarines and underwater equipment, and Ukraine should communicate through our NATO representative. We do not have this now, and the president should identify this. And we want to ask why Mr. Pristagin, who was vice premier and ambassador to Great Britain, but still we do not have ambassador of Ukraine in NATO. So this is a signal. The level of ambassador, this is other opportunity to resolve these tasks. So we should use this opportunity. So Valery, why don't we have Romania? We have Azerbaijan as a partner. They rejected participation in training, but where is Romania?
That's the interesting question. Let's try to understand the logic, how the strategy is approved, the national strategy is approved. It was discussed after drafting several times and have passed several stages of discussion. Today, if we were writing strategy, we were to include Romania into the strategy. But at the moment when the strategy was drafted, unfortunately, Romania was not our strategic partner because by that moment, we had not reached any consensus about some ferry lines between Odessa Oblast and Romania. But now, actually, Romania has become our strategic partner. I would not define and distinguish between the level of our strategic partners. I believe that all 10 strategic partners of Ukraine, they are equally important to us. Even when we think about Sweden, despite the fact they are not so close geopolitically, but next year they will take chairmanship in the EU. And this illustrates that we should not distinguish between the level of partnership, of strategic partnership. And I hope that in future we will consolidate our effort to attract our strategic partners more closely. We all understand that we can become an easy gain for Russia, and with this, I would like to open our Q&A session. So, dear journalists, if you have any questions, you are welcome. ICTV Facts of the Week. As far as I understand, this time, for the first time in such military exercise, you will have the Global Hawk strategic quadricopter interceptors and some other radio warfare methods which were not used in the previous periods. I agree with you that this is going to be the new stage because of those the radio electronic warfare methods are aimed at the goal setting or pointing out to the military goals, and I hope that this will demonstrate very crucial things to the Russians, special aircrafts which are automatically piloted and which can carry out some special equipment for the goal setting and pointing to the goal. This is a very important signal to the Russians that we are ready to fight and that we work on the high precision weapon. I believe that during this exercise, joint effort 2020, we will demonstrate that our military forces can act on the complementary basis. They can act jointly. And that we have capacity to strengthen our reconnaissance effort. Dear experts, any final comments in the context of our strategic partnership as it is reflected in our national defense strategy? You cannot have a big number of strategic partners. You can have just a few. But the problem is that we lack allies. We have no country with whom we would have a treaty about joint military action. And on the one hand, this may raise some pessimism, but this is only the signal that we should think carefully how develop our cooperation with the alliance, with the United States, striving to get the status of the U.S. ally beyond the NATO countries. Also, I would like to add to what Mikhailo said. Of course, Russia dominates in the Black Sea now. The last year, when we had the Sea Breeze military exercise in the Black Sea, we had to tolerate that Russia closed part of the marine territory where that exercise had to be held. This year, the Russia had improved its technology and closed some territories in the Black Sea for the Sea Breeze 2020 exercise. But when the Russian patrolling ship had announced to the Spanish military ship that it had entered the territorial waters of Russia, the exclusive marine area of Russia, which Russia believes it's yours, then the Spanish ship had ignored that signal. This demonstrates that there is political will to ignore the de facto status and to follow more the de jure status. Although Russia pretends to behave like de facto status should be the de jure status. This demonstrates that our European partners tend to behave in line with the de jure status. At the same time, we may expect for serious provocations from Russia. They may try to act with small incidents to create a situation of casus belli, and then in mass media announce that Ukraine, together with the United States, violates something and tries to do something. Russia is always in the standby regime to organize such a provocation. I fully agree with you that both offshore and onshore Ukraine should remain ready and build up strategic partnership with its friends and neighbors to be ready to repel the Russian aggression. I also agree with Mikhailo that local elections and conquest of onshore territories to get better access to Crimean territory might go hand in hand when Russia may try to bring pro-separatist people to the local self-governance bodies in the south of Ukraine. Very soon we expect to have Mr. Charles Michel and Mr. Borrell to Ukraine, and we hope that they will attend either the east of Ukraine or the pre-Crimean regions, and thus demonstrate to Russia that Ukraine has strong partners. I'm very grateful to our participants, to our experts and panelists, and to those journalists who expressed their interest and joined today's discussion. I'm also especially grateful to our guests from Brussels who devote their attention to our event.